Outrageous. That's one of the words I can say on live TV. President Biden and his Justice Department sparking anger and fear as the DOJ moves to investigate parents who voice concerns about their children's education. Here now, Andy McCarthy, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He's also a Fox contributor. Andy, so great to see you, especially on this topic. The Constitution, as you have written, protects spirited debate. So what's up with this nonsense?
Well, this is what progressives do when they get into power. They have the levers of power, and it's one thing to say that we shouldn't have to worry about defending ourselves from engaging in robust debate because the Constitution guarantees it, but the government is supposed to, vindicate our constitutional rights, and if they use the investigative process as a weapon, it intimidates people into backing down, and I think that's what they're hoping will happen here.
To repeat something that you wrote, the process is the penalty. And this is something straight from the Obama-Biden Justice Department playbook. So we've seen this bad movie before.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the Obama Justice Department was the most politicized in history. And probably the emblematic example was the IRS scandal, where they used their ability to administer the IRS and investigate people for their tax situation in order to essentially deny Obama's opposition the ability to unify and to prepare to run against him and to oppose his policies. So, this is what they do. When they're in charge, they use the levers of power to prevent their opposition from organizing, and they treat the political opposition to their ideas as if it were a crime.
And there was one other instance that you noted in the article that you wrote for the National Review, that they signed, under the Obama administration, they signed on to very similar, a UN resolution trying to outlaw speech that expressed advocacy of religious hatred. So that falls into this.
Yeah, they not only did that, Dagan, which is blatantly on its face a violation of the Constitution. You can't ban hostility to something. What you're allowed to ban under the First Amendment is violence, basically, and incitement to violence. And the federal standard for incitement to violence is very high. But when it was pointed out to the Obama administration that the UN resolution they signed on to was blatantly unconstitutional, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton at the time said that if they couldn't resort to the law, they would resort to naming and shaming so that people didn't feel like they could express views that were horrific to Democrats. So that's where they're coming from, and they think it's perfectly fine to use their ability to flex muscles, their ability to have raw power in order to intimidate their opposition. I hate to say it, but this is what they do when they're in power.
Well, you know Merrick Garland. You worked with him when he was in the Justice Department, and he also was a federal appellate judge. So does Merrick Garland, is this who he is, or is he doing Biden's bidding? Does he really believe these parents deserve to be targeted?
When I knew him back in the 90s, he was a sound law and order guy. He was a Clinton Justice Department official in Washington. I was prosecuting terrorists in New York. And he was one of the people that you could really go to when you had a problem, because he really seemed to understand it, and he was wired right, like in terms of law enforcement. But, I don't think he's a strong personality, and he's a moderate progressive. And what you need in the Justice Department is a strong personality that's going to keep the radicals at bay. And I don't think he's that guy. So it's not surprising that he's kind of being run over. The president's being run over, too. I mean, the benefit of the doubt we give them is that they're not radicals themselves. But at a certain point, you have to say, what difference does it make, as long as the crazies are running the place?
Well, what can parents do? And I'll just point out, and I know Christopher Russo, the writer, also noted this. I went through the original letter that was written by the School Boards Association, and they only cited, they were talking about domestic terrorism. They were talking about hate groups had infiltrated these school board meetings, and they only cited one incident of actual assault where the individual was arrested. So these are crimes, and these people are arrested for any actual crime, but there was only one incident of assault that was in that entire letter talking about domestic terrorists and hate groups.
Yeah, well, this is the same game they play with January 6th, right? I'm not here. I've condemned that Capitol riot. I'm not here to apologize for it. But, you know, for all the talk about domestic terrorism and insurrection, there are terrorism crimes in the federal code. There's an insurrection crime in the federal code. They haven't brought a single one because they can't prove that. And what they're doing is the same game here. You have parents who are understandably expressing dissent at the fact that the left is turning the school system into indoctrination factories, and they don't like it, and they should feel comfortable protesting against that. And I would, you know, you ask what can parents do? I think they should be aware that there's very little the federal government can do, really, in terms of cracking down on people expressing dissent. Even if there was any violence here meaningfully to speak of, it would probably be at most a state law matter. So it's not only that you don't have violence, it's not even the federal government's business where it erupts occasionally.
Everybody pull out their pocket constitution. That's what we can stand on. Andy McCarthy, always a pleasure, sir. Great to see you.